She's the one who took it," my husband told the police, pointing straight at me. I whispered, "David, don't do this." The officer looked at me with those cold, assessing eyes that cops develop after years on the job. "Ma'am, do you deny taking $80,000? My husband sighed dramatically, shaking his head like a man burdened by terrible knowledge. I didn't want to believe it either, officer. But who else could it have been? And right there, in front of my neighbors who had gathered on their porches with coffee mugs and judgmental stares, in front of Mrs. Patterson from number 42, who I'd carpooled with for 3 years, in front of the entire street that had watched us build what they thought was a perfect marriage, my own husband tried to turn me into a criminal. My name is Danielle Brooks, and I'm 38 years old. I work as a payroll coordinator at a mid-sized logistics company in the industrial part of town, the kind of place where the coffee is always burnt and the fluorescent lights hum just loud enough to give you a headache by noon. I manage numbers all day, making sure hundreds of employees get paid correctly and on time. It's not glamorous work, but it matters. When a single mother of 3 gets her paycheck on Friday, that's my doing. When overtime is calculated to the penny, I'm the one who made sure of it. I've always been detail-oriented, careful, calm under pressure, the kind of person who color codes her grocery list and balances her checkbook to the cent. My coworkers joke that I could spot a missing decimal point from across the room, and they're not wrong. At home, I handled everything that required planning and precision. Groceries, bills, the kids' school schedules, doctor's appointments, long-term savings goals. David handled the big business money. That's what he called it. He runs a small remodeling company, Brooks & Associates Construction, though the associates part is really just him and a rotating crew of subcontractors. He likes to remind people he's the provider, as if my salary doesn't pay half the mortgage and all the utilities. For 15 years, I let him take the spotlight. I didn't need applause or recognition. I didn't need to be the center of attention at dinner parties where he'd hold court about his latest commercial project. I just wanted peace, a quiet life where our kids could grow up without the kind of financial stress that had poisoned my childhood. I wasn't rich or glamorous. I drove a 7-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door from where I'd misjudged a parking garage column. My clothes came from Target and outlet malls. My jewelry box contained exactly 3 pieces: my wedding ring, my grandmother's pearl earrings, and a silver bracelet my sister gave me for my 30th birthday. But I had something they didn't expect: discipline, patience, and the ability to see patterns others miss. I grew up in a house where money arguments destroyed everything, where my parents screamed about bills until their voices went hoarse, where we lost our home to foreclosure when I was 12, where financial chaos meant emotional devastation. I promised myself I'd never let finances control me again. I just never imagined the man I married would use money as a weapon against me. If you've ever been treated like you don't understand money just because you're quiet about it, I want you to know you're not alone. Have you ever been blamed for something just to protect someone else's ego? I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. And if you believe truth always finds a way out, stick with me through this story. It started 3 days ago. David came home at 6:47 p.m. I remember the time because I was pulling lasagna from the oven when the garage door rumbled open. His face was red, his jaw tight, and he had that look in his eyes that I'd learned over the years meant trouble. "The money's gone," he said, not even taking off his work boots. $80,000 cash from the safe in my office. I set down the oven mitts, my stomach already knotting. What? How is that possible? That's what I want to know. He stared at me hard. Only 2 people knew the combination to that safe, Danielle. Me and you. The implication hung in the air like smoke. David, don't do this. David sighed dramatically, shaking his head like a man burdened by terrible knowledge. I didn't want to believe it either, officer. But who else could it have been? By the time the police arrived 2 hours later, David had transformed our living room into a crime scene. He'd called them himself, made it official, gave them a case number and everything. 2 uniformed officers stood in our entryway while David played the devastated victim. "She's been stressed about money lately," he told them, his voice dripping with false concern. "Worrying about retirement, complaining about our savings. Maybe she panicked and made a bad decision." I stood there shaking, my voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't touch your safe, David. I swear to God." The officers asked to look through my purse and car. I let them because I had nothing to hide. They found exactly what you'd expect in a working mother's vehicle: old coffee cups, the kids' forgotten soccer cleats, grocery receipts, a half-empty bottle of hand sanitizer. No stacks of $100 bills, no evidence of anything. Through the window, I could see neighbors gathering: Mrs. Patterson, the Johnsons from across the street, my Chen, who jogged past our house every morning. All of them watching, whispering, judging. David shook his head sadly at the officers. "I don't want her arrested," he said, as if he were being magnanimous. "I just want my money back." That sentence cut deeper than the accusation itself. It was the performance that killed me, the way he pretended to care while systematically destroying my reputation. Later that night, after the police had left and our 15-year-old daughter Emma had locked herself in her room crying, David cornered me in the kitchen. His voice was low, almost gentle. "If you admit it, I'll tell them I misunderstood," he said. "We can make this go away quietly. No charges, no scandal, just return the money and we move on." That's when I realized he wasn't confused, he wasn't mistaken, he was calculating. He was executing a plan. And the most terrifying part, the next morning, I received an email from the police department confirming that an official theft case number had been filed in my name. This wasn't a scare tactic. This was criminal, and he thought I wouldn't fight back. Over the next 48 hours, David systematically dismantled my life. First came the social isolation. He called his parents, something he only did maybe twice a year otherwise, and spent an hour on speakerphone spinning his narrative. I could hear his mother's voice from the other room. "We knew she felt insecure, always comparing herself to your success. Poor David, you've been so patient with her." At Sunday dinner with his family, ceremony, which I attended because refusing would make me look guilty, his brother Marcus made jokes. "Better count the silverware before Danielle leaves," he said, laughing. "Hide the cash, am I right?" David didn't defend me. He let the comments sit there in the silence, let it poison the air, let everyone marinate in the implication that I was the thief. His mother patted his hand sympathetically while I sat there with my untouched plate of pot roast. Then came the financial manipulation. On Monday morning, I discovered David had removed me from the joint business-related accounts, the ones we used for household expenses and the kids' activities. When I tried to use our shared credit card at Target to buy Emma new shoes for volleyball, it was declined in front of the checkout clerk and the long line of impatient shoppers behind me. When I confronted him, he shrugged. "Until this clears up, I can't trust you financially," he said, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. "It's just temporary." I was forced to dip into my personal savings, money I'd been carefully accumulating for years, my emergency fund, my safety net, money he had no idea existed because I'd learned long ago to keep something separate, just in case. By Tuesday, he escalated to psychological warfare. He met with a divorce attorney. I know because he left the consultation papers on the kitchen table right where I'd see them when I came home from work. The message was clear: cooperate or lose everything. "If this goes to court, it'll get ugly for you, Danielle," he said, not even looking up from his phone. "Theft of that amount, that's a felony. Years in prison. Think about what that would do to Emma and Jake." He implied jail time with such casual cruelty that I felt physically sick. Our 13-year-old son, Jake, had started having nightmares. Emma refused to talk to me. The walls of our home felt like they were closing in. But something strange happened in the midst of all this terror. My fear began transforming into focus because I noticed something. David's story kept changing, slightly, subtly. The first time he told the police, he said he'd last seen the money on Friday afternoon. To his parents, it was Friday evening. To his brother, it was Saturday morning. The dates didn't match. The timeline didn't align. And someone who's telling the truth doesn't need to adjust their story. What he didn't know, what David had no idea about, was that I'd had a secret for 3 years. Under a pen name, I run a financial education blog for women rebuilding after divorce. It's called Fresh Start Finance, and I started it during a dark period when David's spending had spiraled out of control and I felt utterly powerless. I needed an outlet, a way to reclaim some sense of control over my financial life. It started small, just budgeting tips and payroll insights, things I'd learned from my day job: how to read a pay stub, how to catch payroll errors, how to build an emergency fund on a tight budget. Basic stuff that somehow wasn't common knowledge, but it grew. Women found it, shared it, comments poured in from readers who felt seen and understood. The site gained traction. I added affiliate links for budgeting software, ran tasteful ads, started offering one-on-one consulting for women navigating financial recovery after divorce or abuse. It became a quiet online business, nothing massive, but enough to generate decent revenue, enough that my personal savings weren't just from my salary. They were from something I'd built myself, something David knew nothing about. David once mocked women who blog about feelings. I remember the exact moment. We were at dinner with his business partner, and the partner's wife mentioned starting a lifestyle blog. David had laughed, actually laughed out loud. "Who has time to read about someone else's breakfast choices?" he'd said. "Those women need real jobs." He had no idea one of those sites he so casually dismissed was mine. Had no idea it was generating enough income to matter. Had no idea it had connected me with a network of smart, capable women, including cybersecurity experts, forensic accountants, and legal consultants who followed my content. When David accused me of theft, I didn't just panic and accept my fate. I reached out quietly, carefully. I messaged 3 women from my professional network: Alina, a cybersecurity specialist who'd once consulted for the FBI; Maria, a forensic accountant who'd helped dozens of women uncover hidden assets in divorce cases; and Jennifer, a legal consultant who specialized in financial fraud. Within 48 hours, Alina came back with something critical. David's office security system, the one he'd had installed 3 months ago to protect the business, didn't just record locally to a hard drive. It backed up to cloud storage automatically. Everything. And here's the thing about cloud storage: it doesn't lie. It doesn't have selective memory. It doesn't adjust its story to make someone look better. It just records what happened. I confided in my former accounting supervisor, Linda Chavez. Linda had left our logistics company 5 years ago to become a corporate compliance director at a major pharmaceutical firm. She was the kind of woman who commanded respect without raising her voice, who could dismantle bad actors with nothing but facts and patience. I met her at a coffee shop on Wednesday morning, my hands shaking as I explained everything. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a small pad she always carried. When she finished, she looked up at me with those sharp, analytical eyes. If he filed a police report, he made a legal claim. That means evidence exists somewhere. The question is, where? She made 2 phone calls right there in the coffee shop. The first was to a forensic IT specialist named Marcus Chen, someone she'd worked with on corporate fraud cases. The second was to a lawyer friend who specialized in false accusation cases. By that afternoon, Marcus had confirmed what Elena suspected. David's CCTV system auto-archived footage to a cloud server for 90 days before it automatically overwrote. The footage from the day the money allegedly disappeared was still there, still accessible, still evidence. Meanwhile, David grew more confident. He told friends she won't survive court. He started acting like he'd already won, like my guilt was a foregone conclusion. He even started talking about what he'd do with the house after I was gone. Linda called me Thursday evening. Arrogant people make sloppy mistakes, she said, and your husband just made several. We need to move fast. The footage auto-deletes in 72 hours. We began the formal request process for the archived footage. Marcus, as a licensed forensic specialist, had the credentials to make it official. The security company couldn't deny a proper legal request, especially when there was an active police investigation. The countdown had begun, 72 hours before the truth either surfaced or disappeared forever. The meeting was set for Friday at 2 p.m. at David's attorney's office, a formal discussion about the divorce and what David's lawyer kept calling the theft settlement. David wanted me to sign an agreement, admit to the theft, agree to pay back the money over time, and he'd convince the police to drop the criminal charges. I walked into that conference room with Linda by my side. David sat at the far end of the table, his attorney next to him, both of them wearing the smug expressions of men who thought they'd already won. David's lawyer slid a document across the polished wood table. Sign this agreement and Mr. Brooks won't push for criminal charges, he said. It's a generous offer considering the circumstances. I looked at the paper, at the admission of guilt they wanted me to sign, at the payment plan that would financially cripple me for years. I won't sign anything, I said calmly. David leaned forward. Danielle, don't be stupid. This is your way out. Out of what? I met his eyes. Out of a crime I didn't commit? Linda opened her laptop. Actually, we have something we'd like to share with everyone here. Marcus Chen had sent the certified footage directly to both attorneys that morning. Linda pulled it up on the screen. The timestamp in the corner read Friday 4:47 p.m., exactly when David claimed the money had last been in the safe. The video played, crystal clear, no ambiguity. David enters his office alone. He looks around, checks his phone, walks to the safe mounted behind his desk. He enters the code, his fingers moving with practiced ease. The safe door swings open. He reaches in and pulls out several banded stacks of cash. Counts them, all there, $80,000. Then he does something I never expected to see. He removes it all, every single stack, places them carefully into a black gym bag sitting on his desk, zips it closed, looks around one more time, and leaves. The conference room fell silent. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the faint traffic noise from the street below. David's face had gone white. This is taken out of context, he stammered. Linda's voice was ice. The timestamp matches your own police report, Mr. Brooks. You claimed the money was stolen between Friday evening and Monday morning. This footage shows you removing it yourself on Friday afternoon. I finally found my voice. You tried to frame me. David's attorney looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Mr. Brooks, I need to speak with you privately now. But Linda wasn't done. There's more. We also have your bank records showing a deposit of $78,000 into a personal account your wife wasn't aware of, made on Saturday morning, the same money you claimed was stolen. She slid printed bank statements across the table. David's personal account, the one he'd opened 6 months ago without telling me. The deposit was right there, in black and white. Filing a false police report is a crime in this state. Filing a false report to cover up financial fraud in a marriage, that's multiple crimes. And attempting to coerce your wife into a false confession, that's witness tampering. David's attorney stood up. This meeting is over. Yes, Linda agreed. It is. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw fear in David's eyes. Real fear. The man who had tried to control the narrative, who had weaponized a legal system against me, who had destroyed my reputation and tried to steal my freedom. He was now trapped inside his own lies. The room shifted. The power dynamic reversed, and I realized something profound. Truth doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be true. David withdrew the police complaint within 24 hours. His attorney advised him he had no choice. Continuing the false report would guarantee criminal prosecution. His family went silent. No more jokes about hiding cash. No more whispered conversations about my supposed jealousy and insecurity. His mother called once to offer a stiff, awkward apology that felt more like damage control than genuine remorse. The divorce proceedings continued, but everything had changed. I wasn't negotiating from a position of fear anymore. I was negotiating from strength, with evidence, with legal support, with the truth on my side. My attorney ensured that David's fraud was part of the official divorce record. It affected everything: custody arrangements, asset division, spousal support. The judge was not impressed with a man who tried to frame his wife for a felony. I got primary custody of Emma and Jake. I got the house, or rather, I got my fair share of the equity, which I used to move into a small condo I could fully afford on my own. It's modest, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a tiny kitchen, but it's mine. Every payment, every decision, every piece of furniture, mine. My anonymous blog grew even more after I shared my story publicly, without naming David, but being honest about what happened. Women reached out by the hundreds. They shared their own stories of financial abuse, of being gaslit about money, of partners who used control and manipulation to keep them trapped. Fresh Start Finance became something bigger than I'd ever imagined. It became a community, a resource, a lifeline for women who needed to know they weren't alone, and that fighting back was possible. I eventually revealed my identity, came out behind the pen name. It felt like shedding a skin I'd been hiding in for too long. The response was overwhelming. Speaking engagements, media interviews, book deal offers, but more than any of that, the messages from women who said my story gave them the courage to leave, to fight, to believe in themselves. I sleep peacefully now. I wake up in my small condo without the weight of someone else's lies pressing down on my chest. I make coffee in my quiet kitchen without waiting for the other shoe to drop. I plan my future without fear of someone weaponizing it against against me. I'm no longer someone's suspect. I'm not someone's shadow. I'm not a woman who stayed silent to keep the peace. I'm a woman who learned that truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs evidence. A woman who discovered that the quiet strength I'd always had was more powerful than I'd ever imagined. A woman who rebuilt her life from the ground up and came out stronger on the other side. If someone ever tried to destroy your reputation to protect their own lies, you know how terrifying that feels. The gaslighting, the isolation, the moment when people you thought you could trust turn their backs because the lie sounds more believable than the truth. Have you ever been falsely accused by someone you trusted? Have you ever had to fight to prove your innocence when you should never have had to defend yourself in the first place? Your story matters. Your experience is valid. And if you're going through something similar right now, please know this. Document everything. Save every text, every email, every receipt. Trust your instincts. When something doesn't add up, reach out to professionals who can help. Build your own support network, even if it's quietly, even if it's secretly. And most importantly, believe in yourself. Believe that you deserve better than someone who would lie about you, manipulate you, try to destroy you to save themselves. Truth has a way of surfacing. It might take time, it might take patience, it might take 72 hours of waiting for cloud storage footage to be retrieved, but it surfaces. And when it does, make sure you're ready. Make sure you're strong. Make sure you have evidence. Because in the end, that's what wins. Not the loudest voice, not the most convincing performance, not the tears or the threats or the manipulation. Evidence wins. Truth wins. And you can win too. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, share your journey in the comments. Every story shared helps someone else feel less alone. And if this helped you in any way, know that your support helps me continue this work. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and never let anyone make you doubt your own truth.